Hello you, how are you doing? Welcome back. I've been getting loads of questions about semi-hydro growing recently, what it actually is, how to do it, and why so many planty people, such as myself, swear by it. In a nutshell, switching to semi-hydro can allow you to grow more plants with less effort. It's brilliant if you're sick of soil pests like fungus gnats, and it's a total game changer for keeping your plants happy and your care routine manageable. But before we begin, if you're new here, hi, my name's Claire and this is Yoli. I make videos all about houseplant care, sharing tips and tricks I've learnt over the years to help keep your plants happy and healthy. And I'm going to keep this video as simple and understandable as possible whilst covering absolutely everything you need to know. So I hope you find it useful. Let's get into it. So let's jump right in. When you pot into semi-hydro, you can either use a transparent container without drainage like this, or a nursery pot and a cache pot without drainage like this. I'll show you the best way to do both in this video so you can decide how you'd like to do things. So this is the plant I'm going to start with. It's currently growing in soil and it's doing okay, but I think it could do even better in a semi-hydro setup. I'm just starting off by taking the plant out of its pot and gently removing as much soil as possible from the roots. I've had this plant for a while, but if you've just bought a new plant, I'd recommend letting it acclimate to your home for at least a week or so before making the switch. Repotting it straight away is tempting, and I must admit I've done it plenty of times myself and had no issues, but if you're unfamiliar with the plant or if you're in any doubt, give it a little bit of time to settle in. Changing environment and substrate at once can be a shock for some plants and cause them to go downhill. The goal here is to get the roots as clean and soilless as possible. The same applies if you're transferring a plant out of sphagnum moss, coco coir or any organic medium. Leaving loads of little bits of organic matter in the new setup can increase the risk of root rot further down the line. I'm not going to be reusing this soil, seeing as the plant's been in it for a while and most of the nutrients will already be depleted. Semi-hydro, on the other hand, can be cleaned and reused endlessly. Once the roots are as clean as you can get them, give them a rinse off with water just to wash away any lingering soil. It's important to be really gentle whilst handling the roots because damaged roots can also stress the plant and slow its adjustment. Don't worry about getting off every tiny speck, but aim for mostly clear roots, something like this. This is the semi-hydro mix I'm going to be using today. Semi-hydro is short for semi-hydroponics, which basically just means growing plants in an inorganic medium with a water reservoir, so you could call it semi-water. Most houseplants can adapt to semi-hydro, but it's especially loved by heavy drinkers like alocasia, begonia and calathea, although I do grow plenty of others in it as well. Cacti and succulents can also be grown in semi-hydro, but usually without a reservoir since they're so prone to rot. The mix I'm using today contains clay pebbles, lava rock and pumice. All the components are highly porous, which means they absorb and wick water effectively while still allowing lots of airflow to the roots. Although it's easier to buy a pre-made mix, you of course don't have to. Some other popular semi-hydro options include leca, fluval stratum, perlite or vermiculite. If you're mixing your own, pumice, lava rock and clay pebbles are however a great starting point. Even just one of these on their own will work. Another fantastic component often found in mixes is zeolite, which is a volcanic mineral. It helps to detoxify the medium, absorbs excess salts and holds nutrients for the roots. So if you're able to get hold of this for your mixes, I would definitely recommend it. Over the years, I've tried lots of semi-hydro setups, and now I personally love using a coarse, chunky mix. Bigger particles create more air pockets around the roots, and good aeration equals fewer root problems. Before potting your plant up, it's important to rinse your semi-hydro mix thoroughly. As it's a bag of porous rocks, it naturally produces dust during transport. That dust can clog the air pockets in the substrate, making the water reservoir murky and increasing, again, the risk of root rot. If you can, rinse the medium outside or into a container that you can then empty outdoors. I'd normally do this outside with the hose pipe, but thanks to the lovely British weather, we're staying indoors today. If you do this into an indoor sink, over time the fine particles can actually build up and clog your pipes. I'll admit I have rinsed mine in the shower before from time to time, but for best practice, avoid it if you possibly can. So for this method, I'm potting the plant into a nursery pot and placing it inside a decorative cover pot to create the water reservoir. I prefer using transparent nursery pots because they make it easier to check on the root growth, but it's not essential. Start with a layer of semi-hydra at the bottom, roughly about 30% of the pot's height, but it doesn't need to be exact. Then just position your plant and fill in around the roots. Don't press the medium down like you might do with soil, just lightly tap the pot to help it settle and fill in all the gaps. People often ask if I use a wick system or self-watering pots, and personally I don't. I've tried them, but they feel like unnecessary faff, and self-watering pots can be so expensive. Make sure that the fertiliser you choose is suitable for semi-hydro growing, because not all of them are. I also recommend diluting it slightly more than you would for soil grown plants. I usually mix it at about half strength. There's no exact rule for how much water to add to the reservoir, and I usually do it by eye. I just aim for it to look something like this, around the 10 to 20% mark of the pot's height. Don't worry if your plant's roots don't reach the water right away. The semi-hydro wicks up moisture, so they'll still be getting what they need. It's also often best to start with a shallow reservoir and top it up more frequently to help the roots adjust. Now I'll be transferring this next plant into a no drainage container, and the process for this starts off very similarly. So while I do, I'm going to talk you through some more important semi-hydro things you should be aware of. The first one being that yellow or drooping leaves can happen as the plant adjusts. This is totally normal. Your plant's just using its energy elsewhere to develop new water roots. Just keep the reservoir topped up and don't be tempted to overwater. In order to let your plant adjust as well as possible, try to keep its conditions stable. For tropical plants, usually finding a spot with good light, warmth and humidity is key. Also, make sure to keep an eye on the reservoir, particularly in the warm weather. If it runs completely dry for too long, your plant can still easily become dehydrated. Every few months, it's a good idea to flush the pots thoroughly with clean water to wash out any buildup of salts or debris. Again, outdoors if possible to avoid plumbing issues. If you're growing in a jar or a container like this and aren't able to do this, simply filling the container right up with water and washing it out a few times will do the trick. If you regularly overfill your reservoir, the water might start to turn stagnant, which again can lead to root issues. If it starts to look cloudy or smells bad, empty it out, give the substrate a flush through and refill it at a lower level with fresh water. Every so often you might notice mould or a white powdery residue forming on top of your semi-hydro mix. Mould usually means there's either too much moisture or not enough airflow around the plant. Try moving it to a spot with better ventilation or adjust the water level slightly to let the medium dry out a bit more between top-ups. If you notice the white crusty residue, it's likely just salt buildup, which again a good flush through can usually fix. Going back to the plant in hand for a moment, this is the only step that changes slightly. I'm going to fill my semi-hydro directly into the no drainage container like this. I then place the plant in and carefully fill it with my semi-hydro mix in the same way as before. The reservoir is then contained in the vessel in the same way, making it a simple and less messy way to grow. And as I mentioned earlier, you can absolutely reuse your semi-hydro time and time again, but it's always a good idea to sterilise it first. Some people like to do this with hydrogen peroxide, but I personally find the easiest way is to just boil it up in a saucepan. Make sure you've removed any organic matter from the mix, including any old roots, give it a good rinse through, and then simply let it boil for 5 minutes before draining. Then it'll be all ready to use again. Growing in semi-hydro really doesn't need to be any more complicated than that, and I hope this helped to answer your questions. So if you found this video useful, please feel free to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next video.
Stay sexy, plant lovers.